Hey guys, Marissa at KitchenTableStamper.com. Today I want to run you through this fun little You Fill Me With Happiness note card. I love all the different textures we've got going on in this card. I thought this is a fun way to kind of show how to mix multiple textures. I've got the texture created by this vine die and this burlap stamp. And if you look at the white card base, you can see there's a hexagon embossed texture on there. Just the texture of the wood and this fun burlap ribbon trim. It's a really fun little note card, and it's pretty quick too. All right, let me run you through your Stampin' Up! Supplies that you need to make this note card. I'm featuring a Little Wild. It's this fun new stamp set from Stampin' Up! And that's where the little beehive and the bees come from. The vine comes from the Little Loves framelits that coordinates with this. I just adore this little vine die. This is gonna be, I'm gonna use this on a lot of projects. All right, so that's a Little Wild. I'm using the brand new Burlap Background from Stampin' Up! This is such a fun new way to add interest to a card. It really gives you this incredible texture, and it's just so easy, it goes with everything. My sentiment came from Jar of Love. I love the little sentiments here. It was perfect for this card. I'm using my layering circles for the scallop circle, and I'm using my stitched shapes for my circle die. Then I'm also using the brand new Coffee Cups framelits dies for this itty bitty little tag. I haven't put it down since it's arrived at my house. I think it's a perfect little embellishment. I can't get enough. I've got the Stampin' Up! Hexagon 3D textured embossing folder here. This is one of those thick dynamic folders that gives that three-dimensional texture. I'm using some burlap ribbon, and I like to pull it apart and just use one fiber at a time. That's what we are going to tie on the little tag here. And then I'm using these Touches of Nature wooden embellishments. I am in love with these. They are wood texture on one side. They have a unfinished. It takes color beautifully. And on the other side, they're white finish. And we're going to use a little flower from this collection. I'm using my Many Marvelous markers to color, and I'm going to pick out my So Saffron, and I've got Soft Suede, Soft Sky, and I've also got a blender pen. Stampin' pads for this project are Early Espresso and So Saffron. The consumable supplies and papers for this project include a Whisper White card base. It is 4 1/4 by 11 and we'll score it at 5 1/2. I've got a piece of Whisper White, about 2 3/4 square will give you this second largest stitched circle. Then I've got a scrap of Whisper White that's 1 1/2 by 2 1/2. That's for our some of our stamping. You'll need So Saffron. I've got about 1 inch by 1 1/2 inches here for the little bees keep. And I stamped it already in Early Espresso as I was working on this project, so I just brought that one. We're gonna skip that step, but it is stamped in Early Espresso on the So Saffron. I have a piece of So Saffron that's 3 1/2 by 4 3/4. And don't worry about writing these measurements down. They're in the printable project sheet on my blog. There's a direct link below. This is the Coffee Break Designer Series paper. I have 2 little scrap pieces. I've got this Soft Sky herringbone, and that's 1/4 inch by 2 5/8. I've got this wood grain pattern. It's 1/2 by 3 inches. Then the coordinating scallop circle for this stitch circle is cut from Early Espresso, and you could start out with 2 3/4 square for that. And then the little vine, isn't that beautiful? I die cut that from Pear Pizzazz. It's 3/4 of an inch by 3.5 is plenty, and I just cut it when I was making the original card, so I brought it over. It's just simply die cut. All right, let's do some stamping. Okay, like I said, I've already stamped the little bees keep with early espresso. Then we'll need some bees, and we'll stamp them with the early espresso also on that scrap of Whisper White. Now here's my burlap background, and I am going to take my So Saffron ink and ink up the stamp. Then I'm going to bring that piece of So Saffron cardstock in and drop it right down in the center of the stamp. I've got a piece of scratch paper. I like to use the pages from my phone books, old phone books. And we're just gonna burnish that so that we get a nice burlap texture on that So Saffron. See how nice that is? All right, we'll set that aside. Now we've got our Whisper White circle, and we're going to adhere some of the little bits here so we can get accurate placement for our sentiment. I've got my snail adhesive, and I'm going to put some on the back center of my wood grain piece, and I'm going to apply that across the bottom of my circle, and I want it to be a little bit longer off the right side than the left. We're looking for a fun and whimsical off-center look. Now, same with this herringbone piece, but I'm going to use a little multi-purpose liquid glue here since it's such a narrow little bit. Then lastly, this little vine, only glue down the center, in the center. We don't want to go all the way to the edges because it's going to overhang our circle here. We don't want to glue it to the mat. Now we have perfect placement for our You Fill Me With Happiness sentiment. I've got my Stampin' Pierce mat because I'm using the photopolymer greeting. Let's get that inked up nice. And we'll stamp that off center slightly to the left so we've got plenty of room for our little beehive. Ha, perfect. Now we're gonna do some die cutting and some embossing. I'll get the big shot. Okay, we've got one of the 3D dynamic textures, so we need the big shot platform, not the magnetic platform. And we're going to put our card front in the folder so that the fold line is just at the end of the back of the folder. We want to make sure that it's right to left, that it's nice and straight, and then we'll feed the end of the card through. We can add one cutting pad, and then we'll crank forward and back. And here is our impression. Isn't that beautiful texture? Look at how deep and three-dimensional that is. Okay, so we'll fold that one up. Let's get our die cutting done now. I've switched out my platform. Now I've got the magnetic platform and a cutting plate. And there's my little bees, my little beehive. And at the same time we cut the bees, we're gonna cut that bitty little tag from the coffee cups framelets. We can do all of our die cutting in one pass. Even the circles would fit on the platform if I hadn't done those ahead of time. Okay, I'm gonna add the tiniest little bit of color to these bees. You can do them before you cut them out if you think of it. I have been cutting them and then coloring them all day long. I don't know why I don't color them before I cut them, but really all you're doing is dabbing the littlest bit of saffron at the front and the back of their bodies. They have 3 stripes, So I've been doing saffron, suede saffron. And then a bit of soft suede in the center. And then for their wings, I don't want their wings to look uncolored, but I don't want their wings to look blue either. So what I'm doing is just scribbling some of my soft sky onto an acrylic block. And then I'm going to take my blender pen and pick up that ink and just dab the tiniest bit of really extra light soft sky onto their wings. So they've got the tiniest little soft sky shadow. And then clean your blender pen. And I'll take my soft sky and the brush tip and then dab a bitty dot the bottom of their wings. It gives those wings some dimension without making them look like they're blue. Can you see that in the camera? It's such a small detail. All right, now we've got that piece of twine from our burlap ribbon, and we're going to tie it on the top of this tag. So you see I threaded through front to back. I'm going to loop, go over my finger, and then I'm going to tuck the other tail into that space that we made. You noticed I didn't tie an anchor knot. I've got really big loopy bows here, so I'll pull back while we hold the center and give a little finesse. And look at how cute that little bow is on that bitty tag. Ha, adorable. I'm in love with that tag. Okay, so this is a job for the new mini dimensionals. I've got my mini dimensionals, and I am going to cut that final row of them in half, and each of these bitty bees is going to get half of a mini dimensional on back. They're perfect size. No more shredding up a big dimensional into little pieces so that you can bump small items. These little minis are perfect. And get one of the regular size dimensionals for my beehive. Got a roll of glue dots here, and we're gonna put the tag on a glue dot. We'll just leave it chill out there for a minute. And my tiny little flower, because my bees keep is on a dimensional, we're gonna put a half of a dimensional, the little mini one, on half of the flower, so that it can overlap the beehive on one side and be up to the same level on the other side. Okay, everything is adhesive and ready to go, so let's get it on here. We're gonna add our little beehive. Now for the tiniest little bit of interest, we're gonna take our So Saffron marker and just draw down the edges and kind of flick in from the bottom. And then on a different side of that same acrylic block, we'll lay down a little bit of So Saffron, pick that up with the blender pen, and then just swipe in from the outside in each of these little segments. Clean your blender pen, and then I want to show you the difference that makes. So here's our beehive that's been shaded, and here's one that has not. If you look, you can see the detail, and it does make our little beehive look kind of round. It gives it some life. So it's a little detail, but it makes a difference. All right, our bees. You'll notice that there are two bees that are flying toward the right, and there is one bee that's flying toward the left. So we want the one that's going left up at the top, and then one that's going right up at the top. And then we want one that's, the other one that's going in the left direction on the tag. There we go. Now we can add our sticky flower and lift the little tag and add that. I've got some snail adhesive. We'll give a good coat of snail to the back of this and layer it on the early espresso scallops. The tails on my tag are a little long for my liking. Snip those. And we're going to add another generous application of snail to the back of the early espresso. And we'll adhere it to the bottom left of our So Saffron burlap. Now lots of dimensionals here on the back of the burlap because I really loved how the dimension to lift that burlap up off of the hexagon embossing is really a nice touch. It just accentuates all the different textures. So I've got my Stampin' Dimensionals, and I'm going to add quite a few because we're adding it to a texture, and I don't want my card to cave in the mail. So I'm going to be quite generous. Okay, all my adhesive is exposed here on my multiple glue dots, and we're going to center this on the card. Ha, there it is. I just love these note cards. They're one of my favorites I've done in a little while. The bees and the little beehive are close to my heart. Okay, if you've got any questions about this project, about Stampin' Up, or about the new A Little Wild bundle, or any of the fun ways that I added texture to this card, email me, Marissa@kitchentablestamper.com. Thanks for watching.